Hello, I'm Charlotte and this is Books and Bargains. I hope it's not too bright. It feels really bright right now, but the natural lighting has gone, and so I've got out the ring light. Today I'm coming to you for the third year in a row with my big gay book guide for Pride Month. Now, this is all the queer books that I've read and either enjoyed, or I think there's a couple that I've mentioned that weren't necessarily my favourite, but I think the right audience would get a lot out of it. And like I say, this is my third year in a row, so I will leave linked below my last 2 years of videos, and all of these books have representation in them from the LGBTQ+ community. I always seem to lose a chunk of subscribers when I make this video. We'll soon see if that's just a coincidence, but yep, I'm here. I'm proud to be a bisexual woman, and so let's talk about representation in books. In the same way that I did in the past 2 videos, I'm going to separate this by age range, and I'm going to start with middle grade books. And this year I only have one middle grade book on this list, and that's Benjamin Dean's The Secret Sunshine Project. A lot of these books I don't actually have in my collection anymore because I've either passed them on, or yeah, I've not been keeping many middle grade YA books. I tend to pass them on either into the box that is bound for Victoria's or to my nieces and nephews. And so this book, I don't think I had a physical copy. I think this was a NetGalley ARC. And this, if you liked Me and My Dad and the End of the Rainbow, this book was very, very similar, although it follows other themes such as the theme of grief when, I can't remember the character's name, but they've lost their dad and they have to move to a small village. They're used to living in London where it's okay to be gay. They've got a lot of gay friends of their family and other members of the LGBTQ+ community. And so when they go to this small village and her sister wants to come out but isn't as comfortable in this small village, the younger sister decides that she wants to do something to make her sister feel right at home, and they decide to plan a pride celebration in this small village. Like I say, very similar to Me, My Dad and the End of the Rainbow, so if you love that one, I think you would also love this one. And then we move on to YA books, and I have 4 of these to share with you. 4 that, again, I don't have in my possession anymore. And the first of these was Felix Ever After by Kacen Calendar, and this book was definitely a 5-star read for me. This follows Felix, who is an openly trans man, but when somebody starts dead naming him at school and starts to put pictures, I believe, of him before he transitions around the school, Felix then obviously wants to work out who's doing it. I can't remember all that much about this book other than it was fantastic. A lot of these I read in Pride Month last year, so we're going on a year now, but this was just, there were a lot of themes in this one that I just thought were brilliant, and yeah, really, really enjoyed this one. I then read You Only Live Once by Jess Vallance. I picked this up in a charity shop in Sheffield and read it straight away. Now, this book was silly. I didn't know that this book was queer when I picked it up. I picked it up because of the beautiful cover, and it was like 50p. And this, I would say, if you were a fan of the kind of Georgia Nicholson books in your time, you'll be a fan of this one. I do remember there being some slightly problematic bits in it, the way that mental health was talked about. However, on the whole, I just found this book really funny. At the beginning of the book, our main character, whose name escapes my mind, take a shot every time I say that, has decided that she is dying from some rare disease, And so she decides that you only live once, so she's going to put together a bucket list for the summer. And it really goes from there. Like I say, there was some bits that I think were meant to be quite dark, but I just found the whole thing a laugh, and it was a really easy read. So the complete opposite of that is a book that absolutely broke me, and that is History Is All You Left Me by Adam Silvera. I still have They Both Die at the End on my TBR, and I'm still not ready for it. I listened to this one via Scribd, I believe, and I sobbed. So we know from the beginning of this book that our main character's boyfriend, or ex-boyfriend, I think we know from the start, has passed away, and we don't know exactly what's happened. And the book is him kind of revisiting things and talking through his coming out and their relationship, and I just remember absolutely sobbing at this one. So I only recommend this one if you're in a good place and are ready to have your heart broken. And the last young adult book on this list is The King is Dead by Benjamin Dean. Now, I've caveated this before by saying I was a little bit disappointed with this one because I had heard everywhere that it was Black Gossip Girl, and I didn't think that it really had the Gossip Girl feels. I thought it had more of a Defy the Night but not fantasy feel, and I think because I found it similar to A Curse So Dark and Lonely, I wanted it to be fantasy and it wasn't, but again, that's totally a me problem. So in this one, we know at the beginning that the king is dead and his eldest son is to take the throne. Now, he is not really liked by the public. The king's first wife was kind of the apple of his eye kind of thing, and the public always loved her. And when she passed away and he ended up marrying a black woman, the British public did not like that in the slightest. And so not only do they have a teenager ascending to the throne, they also have a black teenager. And what they don't know is that he is also gay, and it's all about keeping these secrets and the lengths that people will go to. I do think that Benjamin Dean took some inspiration from things that were said to Harry and Meghan. I personally am not a royalist, and I really enjoyed this book. I think if you're very pro-royal family, you may find some of the bits cut a bit close to the bone, but I really enjoyed it. It was very political in points, and I think, as Charlie Brooke mentioned in a recent video, the narrator for this is really good. So again, that's available on Scribd. On to the adult books now, and one that at the time I think I gave a 3-star to, but it stuck with me and I think I want to read it again, and that is Insatiable by Daisy Buchannon. Now, I will say, I don't think there's much plot to this one. So if you are a plot-driven person, maybe this one isn't for you. However, I really enjoyed it. There is a lot of sex in this one. There are a lot of orgies in this one. And it's really about it says a love story for greedy girls. I wouldn't have called this a love story. This was a very naive young woman getting herself into a lot of situations with this group of swingers, basically, from what I remember. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. Like, it was a weird one. Like I say, I think it's one of these at the time I didn't appreciate how much I enjoyed it. From what I believe, I know there's lots of sex in this one, and I remember there are female sex scenes, male sex scenes. I don't know if there are any male sex scenes. I can't remember those. But yeah, not one for the faint-hearted, this, but it is one that I still think about on and off at the moment. And I remember at the time, it was the very first one where I read a sapphic sex scene and was like, yeah, that's realistic. Another one that I don't have with me is Stars Collide by Rachel Lacey. I only talked about this one recently. And this was if you're into music and fandoms, I think you'll really like this one, but that's what let it down for me. The reason I'm still including this one here is because in this one we have someone who is a bit older coming to terms with their sexuality. Like you can see, I read a lot of YA queer books, but actually finding adult books that I still enjoy. Although this one did read slightly YA in parts, it definitely wasn't, because there were definitely some steamy sex scenes. However, the descriptions of Eden coming to terms with her sexuality as an older woman, I really, really enjoyed. So if you like books about music and fans and the tour across America on a tour with the kind of costumes and things like that, then I think you'll enjoy this book. I then read Rosaline Palmer Takes the Cake by Alexis Hall, and this one is Queer British Bake Off. I found this book laugh out loud funny, very British in its humour, a lot of swearing, and just the descriptions of cakes and baking and our fabulous Rosaline Palmer. I just don't know what else to say. I feel like I've talked about some of these a lot this week because I've literally just filmed my June wrap up this morning and it was in there. But I'm definitely going to see what else we've got from Rosaline. I'm definitely going to be picking up more Alexis Hall in the future. So next, it will be no surprise to you that I'm putting Her Majesty's Royal Coven in here. Again, another one that I feel like I have banged on about because I have literally filmed 2 videos today where all I've talked about is this book. However, this is queer, witchy, trans representation, non-binary representation. I don't think we have any gay characters in this one. However, we pretty much have the rest of the spectrum. Spectrum, is that the word I'm using? Apparently so. Again, this was a bit like Rosaline Palmer, that I think this is very British specific, sarcastic humour, and I loved it. We then have Milkfed, which along with Insatiable could be up there with one of the weirdest books I have ever ridden. With one of the weirdest books I have ever read. Now, this comes with a huge content warning for eating disorder triggers such as calories, weights, and descriptions of food being good or bad. But in the context of this book, it needed to be there, but just be warned if any of that is a trigger for you. This follows a 24-year-old lapsed Jew who then meets Miriam, an Orthodox Jewish woman, at an ice cream shop. And I haven't read anything with Jewish representation before, and I don't really know how to describe this book. Again, it's very much more of a people study, so there's not much plot to this, but it's weird. There are some really weird scenes in this, so if you like weird books, I'd go for this. I really enjoyed it and I definitely need to give it a reread. A little bit different to Milkfed, we have Idol by Louise O'Neill. Now this again was one of my top books of last year. In this we follow Samantha, who is a influencer who writes a post for a website all about an experience that she had as a young woman, I believe as a teenager before she left for college. So I think in the US that's like, I think she must have been 16, 17 at the time, about a sexual experience that she had with another woman. However, her publicist then gets an email saying that that's not the way how the other person in that situation saw it, and accuses Sam of sexual assault. Now, Sam then goes through a bit of turmoil because she has been a big advocate, as she should be, for years about believing victims. But in this situation, that's not how she remembers it. And so she goes on a kind of journey to the past and finds out some things. So that was a really gritty book that I loved. I then have one non-fiction book, and that's A Girlhood by Carolyn Hayes. And I think I've mentioned before, this is a book that I think everybody should read. I really do need to read more queer non-fiction. So if you have any recommendations for that, please leave them below. But A Girlhood is the story from a mother of a trans daughter who was accused by a neighbour of mistreating the child. And Child Protective Services did come to investigate. And this book is one of those that's written in a way that is so kind of lyrical that you at times forget that you're reading non-fiction, and it made me question a lot of beliefs that I held myself. And Carolyn Hayes managed to tell her views on the story without making it all about her. And yeah, it was just a beautiful read, and one that I think everybody should read. And last but by no means least, I finally have some queer Christmas rom-com recommendations. Yay! So the first two, I can't remember which way round these two are. So they're both by Clare Lydon. The first one is Christmas in Mistletoe, and I believe that this one centres around a pop star or a singer who goes home for Christmas, and it's that kind of thing about going back to the small town and who you were there. I can't remember much about it really, but I just remember that I loved it. And then the Christmas Catch, I can definitely remember. Now this one is a UK one. I can't remember if Christmas in Mistletoe was, possibly. But anyway, Christmas Catch is when at the beginning of the story, our two main characters are trying to get from, I believe, Edinburgh back to their hometown in Devon, when all the flights are cancelled. So they decide to get together and make their way home together. They do know each other but haven't spoken to each other in years. One isn't the other one's sister's best friend's younger sister. And it was just, I just loved it. It was a proper British rom-com in a book. I remember there's like, the train gets stuck and then they hire a car and then something else happens and something else, and it was just so festive and I really loved it. So that's that one. And then my absolute favourite Christmas book of last year is Make You Mine This Christmas by Lizzie Huxley-Jones. Now this, I think the tagline for this one was, the first rule of fake dating, don't fall in love with his sister, and it was perfect. It had, they were talking about, you know, you're at a proper grown-up party when the food's all from M&S. It had chronic illness representation. One of the meet cutes happens in a bookshop, and it had some really great steamy scenes. So this book was just perfect. Like, I don't think any other Christmas queer romance will ever come close to it. So there you have it. That's my big gay book guide of 2023. Let me know down below any books you think I should prioritise this Pride Month, and any queer books that you have loved. Keep being yourselves, always shine brightly and be who you are. And until next time, look after yourselves. Bye.